إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه وبعد. My dear brothers and sisters, I want to speak to you about this topic of medical ethics, and I have called it speaking the unspeakable. Not speaking the unspoken, but speaking the unspeakable. The reason I'm calling it the unspeakable is because to me, a term like medical ethics or judicial honesty or maternal kindness, these are oxymoronic terms. As far as I'm concerned, this is a stupid term, which there should be no need to say this. Because what is a doctor without ethics? What is a judge who is dishonest? What is a mother who has no kindness? So the whole point of medical ethics, today we have to talk about this because it has become not just a matter of concern but a matter of great urgency. But I just want you to keep that in mind, to say that the very fact that we even have to talk about something like this shows the extent of sickness that is there in our society. Sickness of the mind, sickness of the heart. And this is because we have chosen to make commercial gain as the single point of reference for success. And this is the tragedy today, that when commercial gain gets superiority over moral and ethical values, we have a society like we have. And in the words of J. Krishnamurti, which I am never tired of quoting, he said that it's not a sign of health to be profoundly adjusted to a sick society. And we are a very, very sick society. Even more, therefore, important for doctors more than anybody else, whose chosen profession is to heal sickness and who take an oath. It's probably the only profession where you actually take an oath at the end of your qualification to be honest, to be ethical, to be moral, and to keep the interest of the patient topmost in the mind. Now, if we find that after that, if doctors are unethical, if they are immoral, and if instead of keeping the interest of the patient in mind, if they are exploiting the patient and treating the patient like an object of material gain, then we have a very, very serious problem. I want you to take a look at this video and tell me what you think about this. Because this video is a classic example of what happens when we look at trust. Trust is like glass. Once shattered, it can never be put back. Even if you find all the pieces and even if you stick them all back again, it's never going to be like it was. If you look at relationships of trust, I can list a lot of them. I've listed some of them here. Parent-child, teacher-student, husband-wife, employee-employer, lawyer and client, in a masjid, the imam and the muqtadi or the musalli. But perhaps the deepest of them is the relationship between a doctor and a patient. My father used to say, my father was a physician and a surgeon. He used to say that the doctor is the only one who can say to a grown man, take off your pants, and he will do it. Now, this is the relationship of trust, and that is the relationship of the doctor and the patient. Now, what if that relationship, if that trust is shattered? Why am I talking about relationships of trust? The reason I'm saying it is because in a relationship of trust, there are no barriers. There are no safety measures. There are no defenses. You are open completely. And you're open completely not because you don't need the protection. You're not open completely because somehow you have become immune. You're open completely because you don't expect an attack to come from that person. You do not expect evil from that person. And if evil therefore comes from that person, then there is no defense against it. It goes straight to the heart. And that is the reason why all crime is evil, but a crime that is done in a relationship of trust, even legally, is considered far more evil than a similar crime where there was no relationship of trust. what a doctor does to a patient, if it is not in the interest of the patient, is a crime in a relationship of trust. The golden rule, as they say, in Sahih Bukhari is the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, no one of you, not one of you can truly be a believer. Not one of you can truly have iman if you do not want for your brother what you want for yourself. In other words, the famous words of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I think the sum total of medical ethics can be taken and put and expressed in this one line: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The sum total of medical ethics, the sum total of ethics of life are contained in this one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, and see the words of the hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it conditional. He's making a qualifying statement. He's saying you cannot have iman, you cannot believe, you cannot have faith until you want for your brother what you want for yourself. Now, what is stronger than that? What is more emphatic than that? And this is what I want you to really reflect on and say, do you really want for your brother what you want for yourself? When you go into a hospital, and believe me, the day will come, if you don't watch it, the day will come when Allah will put you through the same hoops that you put your patients through. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us all from hospitals and doctors, and to keep us healthy until our last day, so that we die in a state of good health, inshallah. But people who exploit patients, just ask yourself this one single question. Go and sit down quietly in a room, reflect, and just ask yourself this one single question. If you were the patient instead of the doctor, would you still approve of what you do to your patient? Would you still think that was a good thing? Ask yourself this question. I'm not saying and I'm not implying that all doctors are unethical, but today the number of unethical doctors and the number of unethical practices in medical practice, in health, in healthcare, have reached such a magnitude, they have become so endemic and epidemic, that it's important for us to speak clearly about this. Those who do not fit into whatever I'm saying, all power to you. May Allah keep you pure. Stay pure. That's a very, very important thing. Now let's look at the relationship itself. Now if you take the patient, and I've drawn a model for you. If you take the patient, I see four major constituents of this model. You've got the hospital, you've got the pharmaceutical company, you've got the diagnostic center, and you have the doctor. So these are the four players in the game. And the patient is central to all of them. But in all of these, the five of them, which is the patient, the pharma company, the doctor, the hospital, and the diagnostic center, the only one who pays is the patient. The only one who pays is the patient. So if somebody tells you that somehow money is going into the doctor's pocket that didn't come from the patient, then the person is either a liar or the person does not understand business. Simple as that. He's either ignorant or he is lying through his teeth. And I don't care who it is. I do not care who it is. If someone tells you that in this whole equation between the patient, the hospital, the diagnostic center, the pharmaceutical company, and the doctor, if someone tells you that money goes into the pocket of the doctor which did not come from the patient, the person is either ignorant or he is a liar. If there was no patient, there would be no doctors. Please understand very clearly. The patient is the cause. If there was no patient, there would be no work for doctors. And if converse is not true, you could have no doctors, but you could still have patients. People who are sick, but there's no one to heal them. But if there is no one sick, then there is no work for doctors. There's a famous story in the Seerah of two doctors who were sent to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam by the Muqawqas of Egypt. They came to Medina, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam welcomed them, and they stayed in Medina. After 2 years, they came to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and asked permission to leave. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, why? I mean, are you unhappy? Did anyone bother you? Is there a problem? They said, Ya Rasulullah, there is no problem. We are not unhappy. Alhamdulillah, the people of Medina are beautiful. They have been very hospitable to us. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, then why do you want to leave? They said, because we have no work. He said, for 2 years we have treated nobody. There's no one gets sick. So there is no need for a doctor. Now imagine what this tells us. I'm not even talking about the seerah and what was happening in Medina. I'm saying that this shows us very clearly that the patient is central. So any money that is going into your pocket, whether it is legal or whether it is illegal, whether it's a salary from the hospital or whether it's a fee that you charge your patient, these are the only two legal monies that you can make. Everything else is illegal. But all of that, the legal and the illegal, comes from the patient. So get this very clear in your mind that the only one who pays is the patient, and anything that goes into your pocket is coming eventually from the patient, directly or indirectly. Now what is medical malpractice? Hospitals with commercial targets. This is like halal pork. I mean, this is a completely insane thing. How can a hospital have a commercial target? How can you judge doctors based on how much money they make for the hospital? We have reached, that's why I'm saying we are such a sick society. We have reached such levels of insanity that we cannot even distinguish between the sane and the insane. Doctors who have any izzah, doctors who have any dignity, doctors who have any pride of their profession should be seriously insulted. You should feel completely and totally insulted. Insulted to the point that you should do physical violence to the man or the woman who gives you this target. I'm not asking you to do the violence. I'm saying you should be at that point where you say, if I could, I would have slapped you in the face. How do you give me a commercial target? I'm a doctor. How do you tell me that my success or failure in this hospital depends on how much money I can make for the hospital? This is an insult to me professionally. It's an insult to me personally. This is what must happen. But on the contrary, what do we see? Do we see people taking offense? No. No. So ask yourself, when your hospital gives you a commercial target, are you offended or are you not offended? Go look in the mirror. Go look in the mirror. Don't be offended with me. I didn't call you that. You are calling yourself that. If you are not offended, when a hospital gives you a commercial target, go look in the mirror and ask yourself, who is this? Who am I? Second, medical malpractice. Pharma companies giving commissions and incentives, gifts. And these range from diaries and pens to fancy dinners in fancy restaurants, to cruises, to fancy holidays, to you name it, and they give it to you. There's a famous story and a hadith from the seerah where Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent some people for collection of zakat, and a man came back and he said to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is the zakat and this is a gift that I got, and these are some gifts I got from the people, they gave it to me personally. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ascended the mimbar and he said, ask that man if those people would have given him the gift if he was living in the house of his mother and father without his job. Eh? He said, the gifts to you? These are gifts to you? You got the gift because of who you are. You got the gift because of the position that you are in. You didn't get the gift because the guy loves your face. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, ask him, did he get this gift? Would he have got this gift? Would the people have given him this gift if he was living in the house of his mother and father without his job? And then he pronounced a fatwa and he pronounced a ruling, and from the Nabi, it is a hukam, it's not a fatwa. He said, if a person is in a public position And if he takes anything other than the allowance that has been given to him, which is a salary. Salary is halal, but whatever else he gets is haram for him. Now put yourself in that position and ask yourself as a physician. Do you think the pharma company would have given you these gifts if you were not a doctor? Do you think the pharma company will give you these gifts if you prescribe as a rule everyone else's medicines except that pharma company's? Do you think the pharma company will give you that gift if you are not a doctor in this fancy hospital that you work in? Remember that these questions will be asked to you on the day of judgment when you stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So answer for yourself. You don't have to convince me, I am nobody. You have to convince your Rabb. Third, medical malpractice. Diagnostic centers giving kickbacks. And this has been reduced to, this has been developed to such a fine art that I've been told that you do not even need to send a patient to a particular diagnostic center in order to get a kickback. So for example, you are an honest doctor and you send your patients and you say, well, get a CT scan. The patient goes. He goes for a CT scan, he goes for a sonic scan, he goes for an X-ray or whatever, right? So your patients go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you didn't tell them go to diagnostic center X or Y. You just said go get one. Why shall I go? Go anywhere. No problem. I need the report. I am told that after a few of these, the diagnostic center guy will come to you with cash. And he will say, this is your commission. My commission? Why am I getting a commission? I didn't send people to you. No, sir, but you see, people came to us, and obviously we asked them which doctor sent you. So they gave you a name. So we've got 3-4 people who came to us. So therefore, this is our thanks to you. Our expression of thanks to you. Here is some money. They are inculcating corruption. Now you are an honest person until you send them, but the minute you take that money, it's gone down the drain. Diagnostic center. Last one are once again the hospitals that you work in. Obviously, I'm not saying all hospitals are bad, but all the ones that I have come across are bad. And I've not come across all the hospitals in the world, obviously. And I know that there are good hospitals, alhamdulillah. But all the ones that I have come across, and I'm not going to name them here, but I can talk about all the major big names that I know. They're all in the same boat. And what is that? Needless hospitalization, needless treatment, needless investigations, needless expensive medicines. And I'm going to tell you 2 personal stories that happened to me in the course of this conversation. My submission to you, my dear brothers and sisters, doctors, in all of these things, in all of this medical malpractice, whether it is hospital with commercial targets, whether it is pharma companies giving kickbacks and commissions and incentives, whether it is diagnostic centers giving kickbacks, or whether it is needless hospitalization and so on, the doctor is the key decision maker. At the end of the day, the doctor has to say yes or no. Unless the doctor prescribes, unless you prescribe, nothing will happen. Unless you accept, nothing will happen. And therefore, you are responsible. Make no mistake, you are responsible. And the patient pays the price. The patient pays the price. So let me tell you 2 stories. I had a hernia. I actually had an appendix which needed to be removed, and it was at a final stage, so some of the fluid leaked out, and therefore I had an incisional hernia, and they put a mesh over that. And then something happened to the mesh, so I was taken in to repair that mesh. So it wasn't even a hernia operation as in the, right in the beginning. It's just a repair of the mesh, or maybe put another mesh, as the case might be. I went to one of the, or rather the number 1 top hospital for gastroenterology in my city. What is the first thing they did? The first thing they did was an angiogram. Angiogram for a hernia, when I have no history whatsoever of any cardiac issues, no hypertension, no nothing. They did it. And obviously, alhamdulillah, it came completely clear. No blockages anywhere. The report of the angiogram said, but the blood is flowing a little slowly. So I asked the doctor, I said, do you want there to be a storm in my veins or something? I mean, what do you mean blood is flowing slowly? So he laughs at me and he says, well, we have to write something. Right? So an angiogram. Then I was taken in, I was operated, and next thing I know, I am in the ICU with a Riles tube up my nose and with the most excruciating migraine that I have ever had in my life. And the pain just won't go away. So I'm in this ICU. My family is not allowed to see me. Nobody. There is a camera there, and I am allowed to talk to my family a couple of times a day through that camera, and they can see me on a TV. So all kinds of technological nonsense. But this pain won't go away. So when I told them, look, I'm suffering. I mean, it was absolutely horrible. I was like seeing stars. It was so bad. So they gave me 4 twin injections. They gave me massive painkillers, 4 twin injections. They gave me, through the day, they gave me about 3 or 4 twin injections at 6-hourly intervals. But the pain wouldn't go away. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed. On the 4th day, I was ready to commit murder because there was really nothing wrong with me. So I called the nurse and I said, either get me out of this ICU, otherwise I'm going to rip this thing out of my nose and I will hang you with this. So she called the doctor and literally within minutes, they took out the Riles tube and they pulled out a needle from the base of my spine and my migraine vanished. Instantly, it was like turning a switch off. So I said, what happened to my headache? He said, no, but that headache was because of the needle in your spine. I said, and you were giving me 4 twin injections. Why did you have the needle in my spine? They said, oh, but you see, just in case we needed to give you something intravenously. So I said, you put a needle in my spine. You know what the reason for the headache. You were giving me 4 twin injections, medicating me beyond belief in an ICU for 4 days for a hernia operation. Then they took me to a private room. I was kept there for another 10 days. And then because I made a big noise, they reduced some amount from the bill. But I still had a 6-figure bill by the time I exited the hospital. And it so happened, it is the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I was discharged 1 day before my father died. I was discharged and the next day my father passed away. And I'm saying alhamdulillah, the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it was my father's wish that I should do his janaza and should do his last rites, and I was able to do that. But to my deep regret, I could not enter his grave and put him in the grave because I was just out from a hernia operation. They said, you cannot lift weights, you cannot bend down. But alhamdulillah, I did his ghusl and I did his salatul janaza and so on and so forth. Personal experience of what happened to me, not hearsay. I can tell you 1,000 stories of hearsay. I'm telling you my personal experience. Second story, my father's. As I told you, my father was a surgeon, my father was a physician himself. He started having a problem. He was about 76 years old at that time, about 78 years old at that time. And he started having a problem of pain in his spine, and he progressively, the distance that he could walk reduced until he could walk only maybe 20, 30 feet, and then he had to sit down, otherwise there was a lot of pain. Now, we took him to a neurologist. The neurologist looked at him, examined him, told him to stand up and jump. He jumped, told him to jump on one leg, and he did that, hop on one leg, hop on the other leg. And then the neurologist said, and Allah is my witness, the neurologist said to him, he said, doctor, you are 78 years old. There is really nothing that can be done. This is with you for life. He said, just when it gets too bad, eat some painkillers. It's a degenerative thing. There is nothing that can be done. It's because of the vertebra have become closer, so there's some pressure on some nerve and so on and so forth. You are 78 years old. You've got a history of hypertension. You've already had 3 heart attacks. I don't think there is any surgery that needs to be done or should be done. And anyway, nothing is going to change. So just take some painkillers when it gets bad. You are a doctor yourself, you know the situation. So he said, that's the end of the story. So I said, Alhamdulillah, at least finally we found a honest doctor who can say it like it is. Now, that's where the story begins. Couple of days later, we had pressure from the family, and this is of course what happens to us also. I don't blame doctors for that. That's our own insanity where we seem to lose and that's why I said it's a relationship of trust. Because with a doctor, you lose your own intelligence. You trust the doctor so completely that you never ask any questions, which you really should have asked. So this entire responsibility of what happened, which I'm going to tell you, is entirely rests on my shoulders. And may Allah forgive me for that. Anyway, there was pressure on the family. They said, no, let us go to another doctor, so on and so forth. So we went to another one of our big name hospitals in my city. They took us to a neurosurgeon. We had gone to a neurologist, neurophysician. They took us to a neurosurgeon. Young guy, recently qualified from the US and so on and so forth. Spoke with an American accent, just in case you didn't believe that he was qualified from the US. The minute he saw my father, the minute he saw the reports, he said, you have to be operated, emergency, I am going to book you now and we will operate on you at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So my father said, I am on a blood thinner because of my hypertension and so on. Normally we give a 72-hour gap before we do any surgery. He said, Doc, don't worry about that. That's all old stuff. We'll take care of all that. Tomorrow morning, right now, admit in the hospital now, and tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. surgery. So I said to them, here is the neurologist's report. He looks at the name of the neurologist and he says, he picks up the phone, he calls him. Guess who walks into the room? The same neurologist. The guy works in the same hospital, next room. He walks into the room. So now what do I expect? I expect the neurologist to tell my father and me and the neurosurgeon what he told us when we met him personally. But what does he do? He says, no, that's what the neurosurgeon is saying is correct. Surgery is required. So I said, what? I said, yesterday you told us that surgery is not required. 2 days ago you told us surgery is not required. He said, no, but you see the neurosurgeon's opinion is final. Now, we are insane. I admit to insanity. We should have said, the whole bunch of you are crooks and we should have walked out of the place. We did not. We did not. So, my father got admitted. As I'm telling you, relationship of trust. My father himself is a physician. He should have been the first person to ask the questions. He didn't ask. I didn't ask. He got admitted. Next morning, operated. When we were going into the operation, this guy tells me, the neurosurgeon gives me this long spiel about how the chances of success. He said there is a 90% chances of success, but 10% chances of failure, which means that your father can be one of those people who might die on the table and so on. I said, don't worry about all that. You just do your job. Inshallah, life and death is not in your hands, it's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he has to die, he will die. And if it's not today, it's not today. So you do your job. They did the operation. My father came back out. They showed us the incision on his back. It was 18 inches long, huge, long incision, beautifully sutured. He was in the post-operative care for a couple of hours. Then he came to the ward. Now, all well. That night, we were taking turns to stay. It was my brother's turn. My brother stayed in the hospital. Couple of days passed. The doctors came and said, wow, he's healing beautifully. He said, oh, doctor, you know what? You're healing like a baby. This is fantastic. Somebody of your age, you're healing so fast and so fantastic. And all this. Alhamdulillah, at the end of the thing, we again paid a six-figure bill, and incidentally, one night my wife was staying there, and 2 o'clock in the night, they hammered on the door, and when she opened the door, there is a hospital administrator who says, you have to pay 50,000 rupees. She said, for what? He says, up to now this is the bill. So she said, this is 2 o'clock in the night, you've got a patient who's been operated here, and you're waking me up in the night for, yeah, no, you have to pay now. She said, I don't have 50,000 rupees. He says, there is an ATM across the street, you can go there and get the money. So my wife slammed the door shut in his face and she said, get out. So that's part of patient care and part of medical care. Anyway, we came back home. Nothing happened to my father. My father remained as it was. His walking distance did not increase. Eventually, few months later, he became almost completely bedridden, in a wheelchair. If he had to go anywhere, otherwise he could just barely get up from his bed and sit on a chair. And then finally, about a year or so into that, my father passed away. He died. Couple of days after that, or a couple of weeks after that, my brother and I were sitting and talking about this whole thing. And my brother said to me, he said, something funny happened, which I never mentioned. He said the day when I was staying in the ward with Papa. Now in the ward, in the private ward, there is the bed of the patient, and there is another bed for the caretaker. So my brother said, I didn't want to be on that bed because in case he calls in the night or something and I am fast asleep, because he had just come from the US, so he was jet lagged. So he said, I don't want to be. So he said, what I did was I took the mattress and I put it right next to his bed on the floor. So his bed is here, my brother is sleeping here on the floor like this. He said, in the night, Papa rolled over and fell on top of him. Now this is a patient with spinal surgery. The surgery that they said he was going in for, they said what they're going to do, I should have mentioned this earlier. They said what we are going to do is we are going to cut the lumen of the vertebra, the whole of the vertebra. Now they said it has grown, so the spine is like this. He said this become closed like this. We are going to cut it so it becomes open. So there is more space around the spine. And they're going to do that with a number of vertebrae that were apparently affected. So highly complicated operation with the spine in the middle. So if the spine is damaged, he can get paralyzed, completely paraplegic, in terms of his body. So this was the operation supposed to be. They were going to cut it, each vertebra, cut it like this, one by one, and open up the whole thing, and then put it back. So this was the operation of the spine. Highly complex, very complicated. So my brother says that here is this man who is supposed to have had a spinal operation. He said he fell on top of me, and without thinking, he said I just woke up with a shock, and then I picked him up and I put him back in the bed. That's it. He said my father never said oof, he never said, he never complained of any pain, there was nothing absolutely. It was like, an ordinary thing. So my brother says, what did they do? What did they do? Now I'm telling you, I don't have the evidence. But on the day of judgment, insha'Allah al-Musta'an, my Rabb will show what happened. I believe that all they did was, they cut the skin, they just made a subcutaneous incision, they just cut the skin and they stitched it back. That's all they did. Because they knew nothing could be done. They didn't want to take chances with a 78-year-old patient with a spinal surgery, with a heart history, where they had not even stopped his blood thinner. They didn't want to take any chances with that. So all they did was, they cut the skin, they stitched it up, they charged us for spinal surgery, and they sent him home. This is what I believe. As I told you, I have no evidence, but all circumstantial evidence points to this. And inshallah, on the day of judgment, I am going to be looking forward to seeing those doctors before the throne of my Rabb to see what they did. My brothers and sisters, I ask you, I use some strong words. when I talked about commercial targets in hospitals. Now tell me, in the light of this, are those words strong? The law. Now what is the law? Very quickly, let's go into that. And the reason I'm going into this is because of a second tragedy. And that second tragedy is that it's been brought to my notice that people who should know better, scholars of Islam, or so-called scholars of Islam, because somebody who graduates from a madrasa, according to me, is not a scholar of Islam. Without tarbiyah, without working on the internal, on the heart, and without gaining understanding, knowledge in the way of knowledge, you don't become a scholar. You read a few books, you do not become a scholar of Islam. Anyway, it's been brought to my notice that there are some people, one particular one obviously, and some others, who are giving fatwa, and somebody has written a book also, legalizing and saying that it is legal, Islamically it is permitted to take commissions, to take kickbacks, to take so-called incentives from pharmaceutical companies, from diagnostic centers, and so on. Now, I want to say to you this one thing, which is that bribery is illegal. The law, Islamic law, as well as the law of this country and the law of every civilized country that I know, the law in the US, the law in Australia, the law in the UK, every civilized country that I know, the law is the same. All over the Middle East, the law is the same, and that is that bribery is corruption and bribery is illegal. Proofs. No matter who gives you what fatwa, please understand one thing. A fatwa is a legal opinion. It is the opinion of a lawyer. It is not a ruling, it is not a judicial ruling. The fatwa does not change the law. All that the fatwa does is that it tells you this particular man or woman's interpretation of the law. Whether it is income tax, whether it is sales tax, whether it is Islam, whatever it is, a fatwa is only a legal opinion. The fatwa is telling you, I believe that this can be done. Does it change the law? It does not change the law. The law is the law. If all the people who are giving fatwa collect together in the world and give a fatwa to say bribery is legal, it does not make it legal. Bribery still remains illegal because Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam made it illegal. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it illegal. So all of these practices of unnecessary hospitalization, of commercial targets to doctors, of kickbacks, of incentives from diagnostic centers, from pharma companies, gifts from pharma companies and gifts from diagnostic centers and hospitals and so on. All of these practices are illegal. All commissions and incentives are bribes. All gifts to public servants are bribes. All bribes are illegal and haram. And the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on the one who gives and takes a bribe. Let me give you evidence. In a hadith in Ibn Majah and Musnad Imam Ahmad, which is authenticated as Sahih by Shaykh Nasiruddin Albani, Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu is reported to have narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is reported to have said, the meaning of which is, the curse of Allah is upon the one who offers a bribe and the one who takes it. I repeat, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, as reported by Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhuma, the curse of Allah is upon the one who offers a bribe and who takes it. The second one is the hukum of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to stop evil. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, the meaning of which is, whosoever amongst you sees an evil, let him change it with his hands. And if he is not able to do that, then let him change it with his tongue. And if he is not able to do that, then let him hate it in his heart. And that is the weakest of faith. And this hadith is also a Sahih hadith as authenticated by Shaykh Albani. This is what I am doing now. I am witness before I hold my Rabb, my witness, that I have raised my voice against this evil of medical malpractice, which has become rampant and endemic and epidemic in this country of ours. And very sad to say, Muslim doctors are involved up to their necks and over their heads. And therefore, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am warning you, get out of this. If you have taken commissions, calculate the amount of money that you received and give it away in charity. Otherwise, you are eating haram. And I warn you that your Rabb's punishment will descend on you. Make no mistake about this. Make no mistake about this. Third point. Gifts to officials are bribes. As I mentioned to the hadith on Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from his seerah, another hadith which is again Sahih, Abu Humayd as-Sa'idi reported from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who said, gifts offered to public servants are ill-gotten gains. They are bribes, which is called hulul. Who is a public servant? You doctors are public servants. Anyone in the public space does not necessarily have to be employed by the government. Anyone in that public space is a public servant. Gifts received by you are received by you because of your position, not because someone likes your face. If it's a personal gift from you, to you, by your son, by your daughter, by your wife, by all means, please take it. By a friend of yours, all means, please take it. But if it is a gift that is given by a pharmaceutical company, by a diagnostic center, by whoever, remember, I am not getting those gifts. You are getting those gifts. You are getting those gifts not because the guy loves you, but because of your position. And that gift, and that makes that gift completely and totally haram. Another hadith in Abu Dawud, again authenticated by Shaykh Albani, Buraidah ibn al-Husayb radiallahu anhu narrated that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the meaning of which is, when we appoint someone to a public position and provide him with an allowance, meaning salary, anything he takes beyond that is an ill-gotten gain. Anything. Once he has been appointed to that position, if he takes anything other than that, it is an ill-gotten gain. And this is a hadith in Abu Dawud, and it's a Sahih hadith. Final one, people who do that will go to Jahannam. Obviously, if someone has the curse of Allah on him, where else do you think he will go? Khawla bint Amir radiyallahu anha reported from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, the meaning of which is, some men abuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's property, meaning public money and funds. Some men abuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's property. He said they will go to hell on the day of resurrection. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed this rule and this hukum, and he said that they will go to Jahannam on the day of resurrection. Ask yourself this question. How would you like to be in the care of a doctor for whom you were the first and most important priority? How would you like to be in the care of a doctor for whom you were the first and most important priority? Second question, how would you like to be in the care of a doctor who was interested only and only in your welfare, ensuring that you received the best care in the most compassionate way and at the lowest possible cost? How would you like that? That is medical ethics. There's a big misconception in the minds of some doctors, where when you go to a hospital, they ask you, do you have insurance? And if you say you have insurance, then they will prescribe the most expensive medicines for you. They will prescribe all kinds of scans and stuff that you don't need, and they will prescribe ICU care and all kinds of expensive medical care. And their logic is that the patient is not paying for it, the insurance company is paying for it, so what do I care? Again, as I told you, two things. First and foremost, no matter what you prescribe, no matter who's paying, the patient has to undergo that treatment. So the patient is suffering anyway. Doesn't matter who's paying. If you send him for a scan he does not need, then he is being exposed to radiation he does not need. When you send him for medical treatment that he does not need, he is the one swallowing those pills, he is the one getting those shots, he is the one who is doing that, so the patient is suffering anyway. And number two, the point that I made before, which is that in the end, whether it's the insurance company, whether it's whoever, it all comes down to the patient. That is why insurance costs are so high, because at the end of that, the patient is still paying. The patient is paying that insurance cost all his life so that he can come to the hospital one day and be prescribed all kinds of nonsensical treatment he does not need. If that treatment was not like that, he would not even need medical insurance, because he would be able to afford whatever medical care he needed, because it would be so cheap. So in the end, the patient still pays, and you are responsible whether or not you prescribe it because a company is paying, or you prescribe it because the patient is paying. Either way, you are responsible and the patient is paying. So the question I asked you first, how would you like to be in the care of a doctor for whom you come first? Ask yourself this question. That is the root of medical ethics. My brothers and sisters, I want to end with another story. This story is about a young doctor who's in his house surgeonship, hasn't graduated yet. House surgeonship, about 2 o'clock in the night, a patient comes in, he's brought in, he's grievously injured. Somebody stabbed him in the stomach and turned the knife like that. So he was involved in some bar house brawl or something. The guy stabbed him and turned the knife like that. So his inside is a mess. His intestine is cut in multiple places. His stomach is perforated. The patient comes in, is taken straight into emergency. They call the surgeon, because this is too much for the house surgeon, for the guy who's doing house surgeonship. Even though he's technically a surgeon, he's in his house surgeonship, but he's a young guy who's just about to be qualified. So they call the surgeon. The surgeon says, open up, give him anesthesia, open up, prepare for surgery, I'm coming. So around 2:30 or so, the surgeon comes in. What does he see when he comes? He sees the incision has been made, the patient is opened up, and the inside is a mess. It's full of feces and it's urine and everything. Intestine is in pieces. It is a mess completely. The surgeon takes one look at that. He says, who's the patient? Some guy. He's unknown. Some maybe a worker somewhere, or a rickshawala or something. I mean, some poor guy who's nobody. He takes a look at that. He takes a look at the mess that is there, and he says, close him up. He will die anyway. Forget it. And he walks out. So now there are 3 people in the theater. The surgeon is gone. He just came, took one look, and he says, he will die anyway. There's no point in doing anything. Just close him up. So there are 3 people in the theater. There is the surgeon, the house surgeon, who is about to be qualified. There is the theater nurse, and there is the anesthetist. 3 people. The house surgeon asks them, he said, I've got a question for you. If I decide to repair this guy, are you with me? Will you be with me? They said, we are with you. Do what you have to do. So he starts working on it. Now imagine the kind of mess. He's working on it. He is removing all the stuff, and he's stitching up, and intestine by intestine by intestine, like a tailor's job. He's stitching up, putting a lot of gel and antibiotics and stuff. Takes him 6 hours. Imagine standing 6 hours bending like that. His back is like on fire. It's so painful. 6 hours of continuous surgery. The theater nurse and the anesthetist are with him. At the end of 6 hours, the surgery is over. They wheel the patient out and they go home. Next morning, 9 o'clock, surgeon's rounds, post-operative care. The surgeon comes to this bed, looks at the case sheet. He said, who's this guy? He said, sir, he's the same guy who was there last night. So you decided to operate on him and clean him up and so on. Yes, sir. Good job. Gone. That patient lived. That patient lived. This happened in 1954. Madras Medical College Hospital. And that surgeon, the house surgeon, who did that job, was my father. Huh? So I told you I want to close with a story. So ask yourself, how would you like to be in the dua of all those you help through their pain and through their sickness and suffering? Or alternatively, how would you like to be cursed by all those you victimized and you deceived and you exploited and you abused? My brothers and sisters, doctors, choose wisely, because the choice is yours and yours alone. And to help you make the choice, remember this ayat of Surah Al-Alaq, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned. And He said, Alam ya'alam bi anna Allaha yara. Alam ya'alam bi anna Allaha yara. And Allah said, doesn't he know that Allah is watching? Doesn't he know that Allah is watching? Don't you know that Allah is watching? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you rizqan halalan tayyibah, to give you halal rizq. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to clean your hearts from greed. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save you from those who choose to deceive you because of what they get from you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from the curse of people, which nothing can protect you from if you die with that curse on the Day of Judgment. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you examples of the beauty of Islam in the profession, which is an honorable profession. And my request to you is, do not dishonor that profession. Do not dishonor that profession. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.